Hello and welcome back inside the, well, it's called the Parc Fermé, but it is podcast 863. I'm going to say this is the Las Vegas Grand Prix review. I hope I don't run over a hole or a manhole cover in the process of this podcast. I'm sure I won't because Paul has welded them all down, and I know that about Paul. Oh boy, tonight we're going to talk about the Las Vegas Grand Prix. That's what we do. But before doing that, I do have to introduce Paul. You know who it
From out
is.
of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah,
Good.
Yeah, not too bad. It's a beautiful day in Texas today. So
How about that?
yeah,
You didn't go out and
degrees,
spot
sunshiny.
weld to the pavement?
No, not this time. No, did
Nice.
not. It's probably got 2 weeks of this, and then it'll probably be sleeting or something. Who the hell?
Yeah,
knows?
right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's overcast, battleship gray here in Missouri, or as us
Yeah.
natives call it, Missouri. And,
Yeah. I'm just hoping it doesn't get below 50 degrees, else I'll be in. Could be risking my life going outside. So.
You'll be out in a hoodie and a winter parka. You've already succumbed to Texas weather, Up here,
Yeah,
50 degrees is shorts weather, man.
That's right. Every day is shorts weather. It's just how long you want to stay outside. That's all.
Right. Oh, my. Paul, did you get the Las Vegas Grand Prix squeezed in your hectic schedule?
I did. I didn't see it in real time, mind you, and
I
I was
didn't
very
either. It's
happy
too
after
late.
the first. Yeah, the first time I was very happy. I didn't stay up to then wait another 3 hours for something to happen. So, yeah. So
You
I
didn't stay up
decided,
till 4:30
caution-
in the morning?
No, I'm a morning person anyway, so I better
am
go to
too.
bed early and get up earlier than the other way around. So
Yeah,
I
I am
just
too.
the wonder of modern technology allowed me to see it very shortly after the race was over.
Yeah. I did the same thing. So you and I rise about the same time in the morning these
Right.
days. So,
Yeah.
yes, early.
Grab the
Before the sun
worm
is
by
up.
our teeth.
That's exactly right. You got to get up pretty early to get one by Paul. I'm just going to say that right now.
You do actually.
Oh, the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Where to start? Well, there's certainly a lot to talk about this Grand Prix, and so I'm going to try to do that. I had written a race report about the race, and then I also wrote an editorial piece called What's Wrong with the Las Vegas Grand Prix, where I go through and talk about some of the main elements. And I'm going to touch on a few of them, not as in detail as I do in the editorial at our website, but I am going to talk about a few of these things on this podcast and just share some thoughts and talking or consideration points. This is just my opinion. It's my personal view. Paul would have his own, because, he's a man who's confident in who he is, and he doesn't need to borrow
and I enjoy
opinions.
being contrary. Yes.
You do. Paul doesn't follow opinions; he makes opinions. Yeah, so that's how that works.
Question authority, the eels told me. Yeah.
That's right, Paul, the Delphic Oracle of motorsport. And for all of those worried about the last race review, Paul assures me his laptop is plugged in. But he's absolutely right, because many moons ago, I told him to unplug it. And the reason is because the system that we were using at that time had a 60-cycle hum that you could hear on the recording. Now it does not. So
Right, and that you did. I didn't get the update.
you didn't get the update.
Get the
That's
update in the
on me.
mail. I didn't
It's
get
on
the
me.
memo. There's
Yeah.
no TPS report. No,
That's right.
nothing.
I'm totally the George Russell in this thing. That's 100% my fault.
Yeah. You know me being sport manager, I've got to stick to the rules. If you don't get stick to the rules,
I know.
if
You're
the
a
rules
bear for the
change, then I
details.
need I need the update in the manual.
That's right.
Red
And
letters.
I'm happy to say that the listeners did allow for the rules to be changed because of force majeure when your battery died on your laptop. So,
And
unlike
I appreciate
Carlos
that from
Sainz,
all of them.
yes, they were all very understanding. Not so
Poor
much of me,
Carlos.
and they shouldn't be. That was my fault.
Yeah. See,
So
it ain't
let's
so Ricky.
Yeah, right. So let's jump in, as we always do in race reviews. Let's do a little table setting. We'll talk about our formation lap. We'll set the table for the Grand Prix. Let's just start off with the obvious, shall we? On the first FB1, we had that water valve cover that came up, pretty much damaged the chassis of, I believe it was it Esteban's car?
Yep.
And then tore up Carlos Sainz's Ferrari. necessitating chassis changes. In Carlos's case, it damaged the ARS, and he had to replace that. Got a 10-place grid penalty. We'll talk about that later. But the water valve cutter, and I don't know, did you happen to see the team bosses, the press conference after that, where Toto kind of got really animated and angry? Yeah.
Yes, he was very protective. It was like his youngest child was the manhole cover. I don't know what was going on there. I thought he was going to cry, for crying out loud.
I know. It was almost like he was like 51% majority owner of this race or something. He was like,
Get down.
It was like, whoa, man, that reporter, it was like, woo, pulled back a bloody stump.
Hot button. Yeah, hot button.
Wow.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That was not maybe his finest moment. I think that was a little ham-fisted. However, he said, this is not a big deal. We've had drain covers and manhole covers and those kind of things come up before. Big deal. It's FP1. They're fix it, and by tomorrow nobody will be talking about it, et cetera, et cetera. And then he said, this is an opportunity for us to learn about what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. I guess here's my thought on that. He's right. We have had these before, but isn't that the point? Shouldn't the lessons have already been learned and applied to Vegas? Why should Vegas be yet another learning moment for us to try to ensure that these kind of covers don't come up in the future? So we've already Baku, Monaco. There's was it Turkey? China. We've already had these come up. So certainly the lessons would have been learned, right? So my hunch is, I don't know, that somehow when they were secured, it wasn't done well enough or whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. It wasn't missed. It just wasn't done effectively enough. Who knows?
Yeah, it was addressed.
It's a dangerous position. Yes,
it is.
Dangerous position. In the old days, some drivers been killed by such things. So
yeah.
So you've got to be careful, but it is a fundamental part of a street circuit that should be attended to and focused on. I mean, the racing surface and the safety is everything. Everything else around it, is secondary, right? So there's no excuse for it, but also everyone makes mistakes. But that was a big one and had a big effect on that whole day, right?
Yeah, because. Yeah, you're right, Paul. Foreign heavy object on a racetrack is very bad. You think of Felipe Massa in the spring from Rubens Barrichello's Braun. And oh my gosh, think of the fire extinguisher and Tom Price. Don't Google that, by the way. That's horrific.
Right.
You think of those things, when you get a grate or a cover. And that was a pretty substantial piece of metal. It had it was longer and it went down into the asphalt.
Yeah.
So anyway,
look at the damage it did, right?
Yeah, tore that Ferrari up, right? And that, as you said, that's dangerous to Carlos, dangerous to Esteban, and they're going 200 miles an hour, and you don't want to hit anything metal at 200 miles an hour.
Right.
So that was kind of my thought about that. He's right. We've had it before, but that in and of itself the lessons should have been learned.
Yeah. It's not a good enough excuse to say it's happened before and so it'll happen again. That's not. I don't think I'd stand on that pulpit.
Yeah, I don't think I
those
went
words,
to either.
Honestly.
Yeah, I don't think I went to either. The other issue for me coming out was all the fans being frog marched out of the grandstands right before FP2. Just my quick thought, like I said, you can read more of my thoughts on the editorial at our website, but my quick thought in the podcast is if they're going to make the track right, which they did, and they took several hours to do it, and they filled all the holes, and they made it right, then they do need to consider making it right for the fans, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I have a lot of deference for the organizers due to labor, security, and all the rest that they said that was really something out of their control, and that's why they had to vacate. But I keep thinking, Paul, I understand their press release about it. I understand some of the F1 reporters, seasoned F1 reporters in the paddock, and what they've kind of added to that press release and the reasons why. But all of that is issues beyond what a fan would see or quite honestly care about for the money they paid to be there, right? And I put myself in their shoes, and I think if I was there, I want to have deference for the organizers in this case, but at the end of the day, I'd want my money back, you know?
Absolutely, at the least.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the least. I mean, your money for your ticket, they were awfully expensive, obviously, we know, but it's not
Yeah.
just about your ticket, it's about flying, it's about hotels. I mean, everything
Yeah.
was at a mega scale of, expense. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I mean, what Gray said, on there's no support series. Support series, it's great to see other people out there, but it also is a good
test. Yeah.
way of testing the track and everything like that. And so give the Formula One, when the Formula Big Show comes on, everything's a bit more sorted. But the way it was set out means both Formula One was the guinea pig and the Big Show, right? So
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It
that's
was
why,
both. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
On the track itself, now I understand on paper it looked like a desperately dull circuit, but as we discussed, you and I discussed on earlier podcasts, and you and I had texted back and forth, you thought there were some interesting bits and felt it could produce an interesting race. And you were spot on. It did.
hmm
It had a mixed qualifying grid, right? And the second most passes of all the races this year. And I thought Christian Horner subbed it up pretty well. He said, look, there's very long straights, very high speed, big braking zones, and no grip. What more could you ask for? You know?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, the thing is, as I said, I think watching the track visually before the race was fairly dull.
yeah, yeah,
I wasn't too excited, but the simplicity of the track and the way the cars would be set up, which would be there's very little room for compromise. You do a multifaceted track, you're compromising slow turns, high downforce turns, long straightaways, short braking zones, long braking zones, etc. This track was kind of nearly a one-trip pony. And so all the cars, therefore, are kind of narrowed into this little band of setup, and which also brings them closer, right? It's they're looking for that long straightaway. They're going for low downforce, and in the braking zones, the cars are fairly close too. So that's why I thought it would actually be a fairly lively affair when the cars are actually racing for position. Like
yeah,
ovals. You got ovals; they're simple. You do it two lefts and two straightaways, right? So
yeah,
everyone's kind of a lot closer in the same page, and so that's why the racing is closer. And this is kind of different, but the same kind of theory as to why the cars are closer and they could race harder. Obviously, with long straightaways, DRS, long straights can, gives you long braking zones and gives you more room for passing.
yeah. I agree. I before this race several weeks ago, I was kind of doing a deeper dive on the track, looking at some simulations and that kind of thing, and some people driving around it. And I was trying to get my head around what I thought might be complicated. And you were right; some of those turns around the sphere are pretty complicated. One of those, and I don't remember the turn number now, is the way it was designed. You literally were in the middle of braking, but you had to turn to make the turn.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty tricky.
That
A
is
lot of
tricky. Yeah, one of the trickiest types of turns. But
yeah,
once again, none of them were high downforce turns, So it
yeah,
was just
right,
about
right.
mechanical grip through all of those turns.
Right, right. And I was thinking before the race, I was kind of looking at it, and I was thinking, the Austrian track isn't the most complex track either, but it is a
Right.
damned tricky circuit, right?
hmm
And so much can be won and lost if you don't get those turns right. You lose pace and time all the way down those long straights, and it's
Right.
very difficult. So in hindsight, and I know I did get some messages from some people, and they were saying, "Hey, you know, good for you. You enjoyed the race, but I think it's crap, and you need to understand." I like when people tell me that. You need to understand that. These cars are going 215 miles an hour with no real meaningful runoff areas next to walls on a track with no grip. And, it's all about safety, and these drivers are risking it. And, well, yeah, they are.
It's racing. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't take just this track to amp up the risk factor. It is a risk reward issue, and that's what makes Formula One or any form of motorsport dangerous, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Spa's got a lot
Have
of
as much
runoff.
runoff or whatever. Yeah, yeah. But yeah. I mean, that was probably my biggest worry was at those high speeds, wheel to wheel contact can be pretty horrific. You know.
Yes.
Luckily, we didn't see any of that.
Yeah.
But it's up to the drivers to. There's only so much runoff you can give people, you know.
Yeah. Right.
But I would say,
Right.
and even runoff isn't going to help you if you have wheel to wheel contact. So it's up to the
Right.
drivers to measure themselves and
Right.
hold themselves from being idiots. And
Right.
at that point, when you get to Formula One, you should be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. As for the broadcast, I was watching it from television, obviously. The high fencing around the track is one thing, Paul, but one thing I did know is the lighting gantry was all kind of directly in the line of sight from the TV
Yeah.
angles. You know, the fence was a little lower, but the lighting gantry put the lights from the TV camera angles where the TV cameras are positioned. It put the light gantries almost kind of in the middle of the track, you know, and you couldn't really see it. The helicopter shots were better, but yeah, that was kind of an issue for me. And do you remember the first year of Abu Dhabi, its first race? I mean, it drove me nuts. It almost made me give me vertigo. Remember, all of the shots were wide angle, and then they panned and zoomed in. Wide angle, pan, zoom in. Right? I just felt ill after watching that. I was like, I complained at the time. Stop panning wide angle and zooming. All right.
Yeah, I seem to remember a little bit of that.
Yeah,
Trying to put
just
those things out of my mind.
and they were trying to show you the grandeur of the facility, and I
Right.
get it. And they were trying to do that here. I get it. They want to show Las Vegas, and the problem is I was watching this, and I couldn't help but feel like I was kind of watching Valencia, the Jersey Barrier race, right?
Right.
I couldn't
Yeah.
see the landmarks, you know.
Yeah, it was
I didn't-
difficult unless they did pan out to get it. So that's
and yeah,
that's the
unless they
reason.
they came out, they pulled back. I say, oh, they're
Yeah.
going by Harrah's or Caesars or the Bellagio.
Right.
But when you're focused on the car, I mean, that could be 39th
Anywhere.
Street somewhere downtown. Who knows?
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. They better look at that because it is a good visual when you can
It
match
is.
them up.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, you're right. I mean, the way the fences were kind of masked that and took away those probably what were ideal shots that they want to have.
Yeah.
Certainly on the TV, maybe some photographers can get to those places, you know,
Yeah.
from a different avenue. But
And it's
yeah,
the first race. They'll work on it.
Yeah.
They'll go back. They'll
They'll
look at
analyze it.
Yeah, they'll analyze it, and they'll figure out, hey, we need to find some different venues for us to put the cameras, some different angles, and they'll analyze it. They're professionals, and they know what they're doing from a broadcasting
Right.
standpoint.
I mean that's kind of the thing, right? It's the first time.
It is
So
first time. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
need to,
They're
you know,
gonna-
and if anyone's ever been involved in putting a big event together, I know you have, I know I have,
Mm.
you know, where there's a lot of people coming, there's everything has to be right. You do it for the first time, it's
Yeah.
never going to go perfect, right? There's certain things you can never foresee, and certain things you have to kind of go through a process
You
to
do.
get better. And everyone does that in their everyday life, in their jobs, everything. So I think, you know, we had give them a little leeway here. I think ultimately, you know, it was a better first event than a lot of others. I'm
Yeah.
taking away that first day. You know,
Yeah,
that was pretty bad. But I think overall, execution wise, I'm not going to beat them over the head with it.
No, I think they did a great job on that front. It's not easy to do exactly what they just did, and the
Yeah.
money they spent,
Yeah.
which is rumored to
Now,
be
I'm not
half a
including the
billion.
opening ceremony and all that other periphery stuff.
it's just
I
not
could,
my
I
bag.
could absolutely. I'm with Max Verstappen in that
I
respect.
am too.
You know,
yeah.
but
It's
I
just
don't
not
think
my
it
bag.
needed it. You know, but
No, it
and
didn't.
it had nothing. Yeah, a lot of that stuff had nothing
Yeah.
to do with racing.
I-
I think half the people.
I will say Donny Osmond was ace. He
I didn't
nailed
see
the
it.
national anthem. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it was terrific. Great job, Donnie.
Yeah,
Who knew?
yeah. I did-
The other thing I thought was weird, Paul, is let's just admit up front, you know, I'm not digging on the Bellagio. It's a very impressive place. The fountains are awesome, but that took way too long to get the drivers all the way over to the Bellagio so they could stand in front of the fountains and be
Yeah.
interviewed by David Coulthard, get back in the Rolls Royce, get all the way back around the track to the podium ceremony. I understand maybe Bellagio paid for the opportunity to do that, or maybe they demanded. I don't know, but
Yeah.
and I understand, but I
If
will
it
say
doesn't work, it doesn't work, right?
it drained all the energy of the moment.
It
You
did.
know,
It did.
yeah,
Yeah.
you want to get that excitement, that emotion right when they get out of the cars. You want to interview them, and they had a long ride. I mean, they'd been up for 24 hours. I'm surprised in that Phantom they didn't, nod off on the trip over. But so anyway,
That was a cool picture though, them in the car. I thought
and
that
the
was cool.
Phantom,
But
I thought that
yeah,
was
but
super
when
cool. Yeah,
I was like, who's this? Rod Stewart and Mick Jagger going out. It was cool. But yeah, it
yeah.
took too long. And then when they were doing the interviews, it seemed like they were in the middle of a nowhere. It lost
The
all
camera seemed
character
like
and
it was
depth.
still. I know the depth of the camera, the
Yeah.
zoom.
It's like
It looked
the
like the
yeah.
camera was still back over at the track, zooming in across the city to see him. It
Yeah,
was
there
the
was no
strangest
atmosphere
angle.
there. Yeah,
No, the
yeah, that
lights were
wasn't great.
dark and
Yeah,
their faces weren't lit up that great. And then they had to wait for the F1 theme song kind of, and then the fountains kind
yeah,
of went, and they were like, "Oh, okay,
yeah,
we're out of here."
yeah.
I don't know. It didn't work.
They thought they were at the pre-race
Yeah,
interviews already by the time they got there. The
I
pre-race for
know.
next weekend. Or
I know it's
yeah,
crazy. So anyway, I get it, but it just and I'm not so sure. I understand why. If the fans weren't allowed on the track, then they couldn't get really that close to the drivers. So they built
yeah,
those huge plinths that they stood on top of, which looked a little weird. It was almost like
yeah,
everybody standing on top of cereal boxes or something. I don't know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and that was a little strange. I understand you want to lift them up so everybody in the grandstands can see them because nobody can go on the track, but they need to think about that too, the podium ceremony and where they might do that
yeah.
more
I got
effectively.
it.
And
Hey, remember? I know you don't. I know you do remember Lewis Hamilton at the opera. Why didn't they just do that?
exactly,
Have
exactly
them just fly over the
over
audience. I
the
know
over
Grace
the
would very
audience.
much appreciate that kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
approach. Just have them throw in t-shirts and stuff.
That's right. They could have a T-shirt gun, and they could just fly over the audience, and yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I don't know. So that I mean, I don't know. It's okay,
Yeah,
but anyway, that was
yeah,
weird. The hype is a whole different issue. So, one of the things about the hype and the overblown hype and pageantry and glitz and glamour or whatever you want to call it, when you hype something so much. Let me back up. There was a lot of negativity about this race before the race had even happened, right?
yeah,
I mean, we were weeks away from the race, and there was lots of negativity on social media, etc., about this race. It was almost to the point, and now after the race, I've gotten DMs and messages from people, and they're calling me names and stuff about how pathetic it was and horrible it was, and boy, that water valve cover on FP1 was the fuel they needed to. Is I told you, I told you it was going to be an S show and it was a joke
yeah.
and blah blah blah. It was almost like they wanted it to fail,
hmm
Um, I got to be
That's
honest
the
with you.
culture nowadays. Everyone's waiting to be outraged, right?
It is.
Everyone
Everybody
wants
wants to be
have
outraged.
an axe to
Yeah.
grind.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And I feel like that overblown, over the top hype contributes to
hmm
that. If you set
yeah,
unrealistic expectations, it leads to unwanted outcomes. You were so. I mean, people know when they're being pandered to. I have an issue when our current culture where we're overhyping the hell out of athletes. The cameras are all low shots of them standing up there, and they're all supposed to be badasses, like they're invincible superheroes in the Marvel universe. And it's just not true. They all poop and wipe their butt just like the rest of us. And the reality of it is you overhype something like this, people get tired of that. And
right.
then they push back because they know they're being pandered to. And I think there was a lot of that. And so FP1 was the thing they wanted to really get their teeth into and say, I told you so. But, then it was about the track and what a joke the track was, et cetera, et cetera. It's all unfortunate. I mean, we can argue about the gift wrapping, But the reality is the facilities themselves and the race were very well done. And I say it's a big congrats to the GP team. They did a great job on that. And I would say that, yes, there were warts, and yes, there were hiccups, and there were unfortunate things, and there were things that were hard to stomach. I'm like Max. I think the point of Vegas being a destination city is that why did they have all that entertainment on the grid when Vegas is the entertainment? You don't need to bring that on the grid. It's everywhere, right? Just the fans, as soon as they leave the grandstand, they're inundated with this stuff, right? So you didn't really need to do that. On the flip side of that coin, they do want to show the rest of the world that Cirque du Soleil and Piff the Magic Dragon and all this stuff. And, people might say, hey, that's awesome. I'd love to see that. I'm going to go next year. So I get it. They're selling it. But don't
oversell it.
Yeah, I'm kind of like Max. I don't like constructs in my sport, and I don't like overhyped stuff when it's more event than sport. But I'm old school, so that stuff doesn't appeal to me. Doesn't mean that it's wrong that it may appeal to you, and that's fine. But I would say give it time. Time will equalize the elements of this race. Would I change things? You bet I would. Could they reprofile some of the track? Of course they can. They do all the time. Will ticket prices come down? I think they probably will. This is supposed to be the crown jewel of American F1 races, so I think we just need to give it time to find its milieu, find its place in the pantheon of races. It's a 10-year deal, and we just need to give it time for it to become what it's meant to become. And that goes two ways. I don't think the LVGP group should be overselling it beyond what it will naturally and organically become. And it very much could be the crown jewel.
It could, yeah. I mean, you do that, and you're always going to disappoint, right? You want to exceed expectations, so maybe lower the hype a little bit, and let the race be organic. I mean, it wasn't a boring race. What would happen if it was a boring race? I don't know. But I get they want to show Vegas off and what it's got to offer, but there's also a limit to how much you can take that when you're simply turning on the TV to watch a motor race.
Yeah, right? It was interesting to see the teams, most of the drivers except for Max, and the Sky Sports crew. I mean, they were over the top praising this thing. It was almost like, you guys in PR circles, and I'm sure you know this, you have crisis management, right, in PR. And so you come up with crisis management scenarios of what you do. And that wasn't exclusively just for the Las Vegas Grand Prix group. These days, they had the media, the Sky Sports running crisis management for them, the team bosses, Toto Wolff running crisis management for them, drivers running crisis. I mean, everybody was all in, and they're all like, look at our big thing here, and isn't this great? Because they're all on that prize money bandwagon. So for sure, get a bigger cut of the pie. But also for the teams, I think in general, they probably and all the reporters, it was probably a great event to be at, because I would think
you were close to everyone, and I'm sure the rooms were a little better than the Motel Sank at Magna Coa or wherever they've been to in the past, right? So it's there is. You go to certain tracks, even on our IMSA thing, and you have to stay an hour and a half away, and some others you go to Long Beach and you're like 5 minutes from that has a change on your psyche and how you appreciate the events, right? It's everyone's human, and I'm sure Crofty was running rings around Las Vegas in his fitness campaign, and
I'm sure he was. He's quite the runner.
He was probably picking up some of all those cards that get shoved in your face, as you go down the strip.
Yeah. Who knows?
Stopped and had a smoke with Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. Right. The pamphleteers. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about all right. So I've bored everybody. This is just my opinion. Let us know what you guys think. And if you want to read more thoughts, you can go to our website. I got an editorial there, and chime in there too as well. Leave your comment. That's that's more than welcome at our website. Let's start at the top. Red Bull, Sergio Perez, P3, Max Verstappen, P1. This wasn't your typical Max takes pole, runs away, and has a 30-second lead over everybody and wins in a dominant fashion. He had oil dry on his side of the grid. That wasn't fun for anybody on the dirty side. He tried his patented Max move into turn one, discovered suddenly he had no grip. This pushed him out wide, right? Now, to be fair, I went back and watched that several times. Charles didn't have any grip either. And he was drifting out, but he was also having to avoid Max drifting out, right? So, they both went in there pretty hot, and Max lost grip. Charles lost grip, but he had to make even more way for Max coming over, and he did. And they both went wide. It delivered a 5-second penalty for Max, which had Sky Sports commentators just apoplectic as to why they didn't force him to give the spot back instead of the 5-second penalty. Your thoughts on that, Paul, and why?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's fair because, as we've seen, track position can be very, very powerful, especially for Max Verstappen. And, Charles earned pole position. He earned the right to, get down into turn one first if he got the good enough start. And I think if someone does push you out and you go out of bounds, then I think the quick and best way is just to switch positions and then get on with the race. But I don't like the 5. I think the 5 seconds is not enough, but I don't want to add seconds to penalties like that. I think switching a position, is probably the right thing. But it took him so long.
That was
to come to that decision. They've run 5 laps, and at that point, then it's unfair in general to switch positions when you've been driving to that level. So either it needs to be very, very quick, or not happen at all, I suppose. But
and I think
5 seconds just doesn't do it.
I agree. I thought when they came out and they said it was a 5-second penalty, and I thought, well, the best thing would have been to swap them right when it happened. They didn't do that. The team felt they were justified. Then they came out with a 5-second penalty, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, that's nothing because Max is already 2 seconds ahead. Well, he ended the race 2 seconds ahead of Charles, not 5. The other thing was this clearly wasn't a race where Max was going to walk it 30 seconds in the lead. And that 5-second penalty is like, well, that's nowhere near Max gets away with murder. I got to thinking, didn't Lewis get like a 5-second penalty for effectively ending Oscar Piastri's race earlier this season? I mean, it was a 5-second penalty, and everybody seemed fine with that. But in this case, that 5-second penalty was a major issue for Max. And, he came in, he served that penalty on his first stop. Then he came out, had to fight his way back up toward the front. And then he had that tangle with Russell, which brought out the second safety car, and they boxed him. They took a look at the structure of the wing. It was sound. They put on fresh rubber, got him back out. This left him fighting all the way back up to the front, passing Perez and Leclerc to take his 18th win of the season. Right. So, go ahead.
That's true, but you can't. That's kind of saying the penalty was right or wrong based on how the race ended up rolling out, right? Yes, it's true. I think you're right. The 5-second penalty was enough in how it actually did affect his race.
But you wouldn't have known that at the beginning.
You wouldn't have known that at the time. And another thing, yes, Max went in. He went into, there was no grip in there. Well, there was no grip for the speed you were doing and when you braked. And who's in control of that?
As Alonso proved.
As Alonso proved. But other drivers did slow down enough and get the car to turn and didn't go out of bounds. So it was a driver error that should be penalized, especially if you gain a position. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was saying the benefit of hindsight is the 5-second was a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Because I think the Sky Sports crew felt like he's already got 2. He'll just jet off 5 seconds and call it a day and won't be impacted. That's not exactly how that all went down. But that's the beauty of hindsight. But I agree with you. They should have swapped the places. I think that would have been the right thing to do, but they didn't. It was a 5-second penalty. Max said very much kind of what you were saying in the lead-in earlier. Max said that the low deg they were having on their hards allowed them to run flat out on the hards. And he said that the amount of slipstream that you get is really good on a lot of the places, along with DRS. He thought was pretty strong, but the slipstream also was strong. And he said the corners were all slow corners, so he didn't suffer as much being closer to the cars ahead of him. And as he passed his way to the front. So it was a little combination of that and the track specifics, those slow corners, not ruining or preventing him from running closer to cars in front of him. The slipstream is powerful. DRS is powerful. And they even had a short DRS zone. So he said that with those hards, their team, his car anyway, really performed well on the hards and enabled him to push, pretty much flat out. So kind of what you're saying at the lead-in.
Yeah.
18th win, Paul.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He had to earn it.
Crazy. Yeah, he did earn this one. He did earn this. I mean, he earns them all.
He does.
Because, he's 3 years ago, he wasn't in the fastest car, right? I mean, you earned the right to, being a driver and being a very good driver, to reap the rewards of you and your team working together and, putting out a package that dominates. And so he deserves them all, but he had to work a little harder for this one for sure, and the team did too.
Yeah. For Sergio, he had damage from the first turn debacle, boxed early for tires and wing, and muscled his way back to second place. The safety car worked a treat, Paul, for him. This left him running in second, where he had a good battle with Leclerc, who had passed Sergio on the last lap. So Sergio ends up coming in third. But still, Sergio secured second in the Drivers' Championship. That's the first 1-2 in a Drivers' Championship Red Bull's ever had. So it goes a long way for securing or solidifying his contract for next year, but because he still has another year on his contract. But that's I thought it was a fantastic race. I mean, truth be known, he should have been in that position to begin with. We've said that a million times.
Right.
But he does like a street course, does Sergio, and he did do a very good job of coming back up to be in a position for that safety car to benefit from it, right? Had that safety car not come out, he would have boxed, he would have been back in the field and had to work it. But, it was great timing, very lucky. And it worked out well for him to finish on third. You feel like he was sleeping a little bit on the last lap?
Yeah,
I was a little surprised. I felt
he even verbalized how much he was sleeping.
Yeah, I was a little surprised he didn't put up more of a defense or moved left and defend the line. That's we've seen Sergio be a fierce defender,
Yeah,
and he didn't put up a big fight
for sure. Yeah, that's two races in a row where I think the other one was a bit different, but this one was definitely defensible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even I'd say verbally afterwards, he said, "Well, I just didn't expect Leclerc to come from that far back." Well,
it's the last
then
lap.
Shame on you. It's the last lap. If there's someone behind you, I'll tell you like this: if I'm in a race and there's someone behind me, that last lap is probably the slowest lap I do of the weekend because I'm driving offline and blocking the crap out of you the whole time. You don't give him a door, and he gave him a big door open, and
he did.
And kudos to Leclerc for being ready and planning that move. But yeah, shame on Sergio. He had nothing to lose by covering that braking zone, that slot, and he didn't do it. Yeah, it's a shame. But because, as you said, I mean, I thought he drove a fantastic race.
He did.
Right up until the last lap.
I know. I thought he was doing a great job. I thought he was
He was.
There was a moment I thought he was on par for the win. But
he
had a higher downforce setup than Max and Charles, and so ultimately that cost him as the grip started to run out of the tires a little, and it kind of cost him. Allowed Charles to get back by him, but
it was surprising though, because I mean, with higher downforce, he should have been better in the braking zones than Charles was. But
which is where he got passed.
So
he should have been able to go deeper into that corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Ferrari. Charles Leclerc, what is he? Charles Leclerc in P2, Carlos in P6.
No, it cannot be, Ricky.
It can't be, Ricky. Carlos had a tough weekend with the damage during FP1. Then he got that 10-place grid penalty for changing his ERS. This led to outrage from fans and the commentators and Sky Sports guys, and Karun is beside himself because there's no force majeure leeway in the regulations.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though. I agree with Martin. Martin said it's a slippery slope, that we shouldn't go down willy-nilly. I agree with that, and I read an article, and names totally escape me. One of the team members who used to work for the IRA, and I'm so sorry I cannot remember the name, but he said he was present when they were writing those regulations with team input, and all the teams were against a force majeure safety valve in those regulations. And he said it was very self-serving. He thought, and Martin alluded to it, that some teams would start saying, well, there might be certain curbs that are higher and doing damage to the bottom of our car, and we're going to claim force majeure. There's other elements about the track or whatever that we're going to claim force majeure. It's a slippery slope, and you could see where they would go down this because the teams will exploit that, right?
I can see that, but I read a lot of real rule books, trying to find loopholes and try to understand, and including ones written by FIA sanctioning bodies and all that kind of stuff. And most of the time, they put a lot of mays in there. We may do this, and we may do this, and we may do that, and we may not do that. To leave those windows open for such instances it's one thing that the claim. A team can claim force majeure, but the sanctioning body, if they word their rules correctly, can say yay or nay. I think in this respect, they were obviously trying to find a way to allow them to get around the rule. Everyone was, right? Even the FIA were trying. They weren't just sitting there going, well, sorry, tough luck. They were literally looking for their own loophole in the rules. So I am surprised there isn't that in there, because most rule book, it's annoying, quite honestly, when you're reading the rule books, because you don't know what bloody penalty you're going to get. Well, we may do this, and we may do that, and we may give you may send you home, and we may give you a trophy. I don't know, but so it leads to a lot of back and forth conversations with stewards that I don't enjoy that much. But so I am surprised there wasn't that. And the right thing would have been not to penalise him, obviously. But they're stuck and handcuffed to their own rules sometimes, and this is one that didn't work out for anybody, really.
Yeah, I agree, and it's a good reminder of why the teams. And this is where I agreed with Max Mosley, former FIA president. He used to write the regulations where all the regulations had enough leeway for them to weigh in one way or another. Now, people would say that was a way that they could worm in or out on an issue. They could prevent certain teams from doing this, or prevent certain teams from doing that, and misuse that leeway. I see where those accusations. It's true. I could see where those are true, but I also agreed with him that what the leeway you're leaving in the regulations accommodates for the context of the situation, because there is always context to the situation, just like this weekend. No, there is no force majeure clause, and that's written in, and it's pretty hard and fast now. Whereas Max would have maybe not written that on a rock. There would have been some leeway with that, because in this case, the governing body would have allowed for force majeure in context. Later saying, well, that curve's too bumpy and it's chewing up our plank on the bottom of our car, we're claiming force majeure. They can say no, contextually. It's the same for everybody, right? Whereas this wasn't the same for everybody. And so, but it's a good reminder of why teams shouldn't. That's like having 10 foxes guard the hen house. It's probably why you not want to do that.
There is no perfect solution to that thing.
There's not.
As I said, because it's frustrating on one side when things are so up in the air. As I said, the maze and the what ifs, that you don't really know where you sit sometimes. But in this situation, obviously, it really didn't work very well.
And you can't write a regulation for every possible scenario under every possible context. You can't.
No.
So, and there's a lot of people that say, well, they should have a rule. Well, they should. If they wrote a rule for everything a lot of these fans are moaning about, you'd have a tome. It would take a library to hold all of the volumes of the FIA regulations. You can't do it. At
Yeah.
some point, you're going to have to let stewards render decision. Despite all of that, Carlos did have a decent race, recovering to P6. He did that, Paul, by switching to a two-stopper mid-race to maximize his track position. He said the first half of the race he had a lot of engine temp issues because he's running behind other cars, so he had to cool down the
Right.
engine temps, and switching that two-stopper allowed him to do that, unlike the first stint, and he came home in P6. So, yeah, it wasn't great for him. He made up 6 places, finished there. Not a banner weekend for Carlos.
No, not a banner weekend. Yeah, it is a shame, but an impressive job by Ferrari and Alpine for fixing those
Yeah,
cars in the short
no
time that
doubt.
they did. I mean, that is not a small task at all. It's
All
not
new
like the old
chassis.
days where, yeah, where you roll out the T car and you just change the number
Yeah,
and the driver's name. They
yeah,
literally, I think someone got in trouble for it. Was it Haas? Somebody got in trouble
yeah.
for having their car too
Two
built
built.
up.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
and got a penalty for that. So, I mean,
yeah.
we Steve Matchett, in one of his books, I think alludes to what state the car can be in. It's got to be a very minimal. It's really got to be a
Yeah,
tub with a loom in it or something like that. So it's a
yeah,
lot of work to do. But yeah, kudos to those guys to get changing the chassis because even if it was a longer span for them to do all that, I wouldn't have thought it was possible in Formula One
yeah,
terms. I mean,
yeah.
when these new engines came out, it was like half a day to switch an engine, right? And now they're
Oh, I know.
rebuilding a new car in 2 hours. Pretty astounding.
It's very impressive.
Yeah,
Charles also lacked grip in T1, as I mentioned, but he also had to avoid a sliding Verstappen, which forced him wide. But he took the lead on merit right before Max stopped. Remember, on that first stop. So right
hmm
before Max was going to box, Leclerc had hunted him down. People were expecting him. While they were moaning that he wasn't forced to reverse the grid place, he was a little over 2 seconds ahead. But Charles started
right.
reeling that in. It got into DRS zone, and then passed Max on merit right before Max boxed, which was a good sign, right? By this time, I was desperately worried as a Ferrari fan. I was desperately worried that Ferrari would have a lot of graining. Because we know they put too much heat in their tires and they chew them up. We know that. But at this cold track, that actually works in their favor, right? And I thought that's
As long
true.
as you
But if
manage it well, yeah.
yes, because if you generate a bunch of heat on a cold track, you could see the graining, right? Which is what Williams suffered from. So I was worried they're going to have graining, but he didn't, Paul. For him to catch Max back up, pass on merit, I thought, fingers crossed. Well, this is looking pretty good, right?
Yeah,
He
absolutely.
managed the tires really well. The timing of the second safety car, though, this is what caught him out. Red Bull boxed both of them. He didn't box. This left him on what, 4 or 5 lap older tires, and Max managed to get
Right.
past him. Despite that, with Sergio running more downforce, Charles was able to nab P2 with a really good move on the Mexican on the last lap. As we mentioned, Sergio a little bit asleep at the wheel there. Great lunge, great effort by Charles to nab 2 back after being passed by Sergio.
Yeah.
And so that was really good. Hindsight being 2020, it's easy for me to say, you should have boxed under the second safety car. Yes, had you done that, you'd had 2 cars ahead of you on fresh tires too, but it wouldn't have been Max. And you'd had fresh tires too, but there was only 5 lap delta. In
Yeah.
fairness, if I was Ferrari, I would have made the same decision because track position is critical. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's yeah. First off, awesome job by Charles. I thought the car was and him were great through that race, and I think the pass was phenomenal. He was working just like we saw Alonso do it. It didn't just happen then. He
Yeah,
was thinking about that move 4 laps before he actually made it, right?
right.
A lot of thought and planning goes into this with using energy store, which we didn't really go into with the Alonso thing, where he literally gave up the position while he's not using energy store, so he'd have all the energy store for when he really, really wanted it, right? So,
Yeah,
and Charles was doing the same thing, storing up his energy so that when he knew when he was going to give it a go, he would have everything guns a blazing, and
yeah,
he did a great job. And it was fun to see the Ferrari. I think they were an even match for the Red Bull this weekend. Um, and yeah, the race just didn't quite pan out. But if you're in the lead, it's so hard to make the decision because if you
yeah,
everyone reacts to the leader. So if you don't stay out, everyone does, as it comes in, oh, sorry, the other way around, right? So they're
Yeah.
going to react to you, and they're always in the catbird seat in those situations.
Hmm.
So damned if you do, damned if you don't, quite honestly, for Charles. But luckily the tires were, 5 laps older, but luckily I don't think it was super, you know, impactful. Only when you're racing against Max in the Red Bull, because obviously he had older tires, but he still managed to outbrake Sergio. So that kind of
Yeah.
gives you, that it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't ideal, and you have to be ideal to beat Max Verstappen.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Alpine, Pierre Gasly, P11, Esteban Ocon, and P4 inherited that with Russell's penalty, but Pierre looks set for a terrific race running up
Hmm.
front for most of it. And I thought, wow, and Esteban was a little ways back. And I thought, man, Pierre's going to have a great race. Both cars stopped before the second safety car, though. The heart compound started graining on Pierre a bunch, and he struggled for the rest of the race. And he said it was tough to go from fourth place on the grid to no points. And I was watching him drift back. It almost looked like to me, Paul, that he had some other issue with the car. His pace was off that much,
Yeah, I
He was
thought
just getting past.
on the broadcast, I thought they said he had some kind of energy store issue as well,
Yeah, that's what
didn't
I
they? I
heard
mean, that would
too.
make
Yeah,
more sense to me,
yeah,
because
yeah.
he was literally being sucked up on the straight. So
He
graining is
was.
one
He
thing,
was.
but I think they had more issues than the graining for sure. You don't
Yeah,
go that far back. Yeah,
yeah. That's what they said on the broadcast too, and that he had some other issue, as well as graining. Because I was thinking, the graining, other teams have graining, and the Williams did drift
yeah.
backwards, and maybe that was it. So when I read the team statements, they didn't mention any other issue other than graining.
Well, it is,
Um,
it is, it is
it is a
Renault. They don't
team.
want to talk about any power unit issues. Then nothing wrong with the power unit. What's all that smoke coming out of it? Nothing. It's
Right.
all part of the plan. Move along.
Don't piss
Yeah.
off Ryan Reynolds. I mean, for God's sake.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Keep the
Yeah.
illusion, so he keeps funding
Yeah.
our engine program.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Gasly was lively out there. It looked
Yeah, it
really good
was.
for a very very long time, and it was unfortunate at the end. He fell like a stone.
Yeah,
Very
he did.
surprising, but yeah, very unfortunate.
And for Esteban, he boxed a few laps later than Pierre, had a little fresher tires. He passed Pierre despite radio calls to hold station, and secured fourth after he fifth, but he got fourth after Russell's penalty. So a really good run and run up through the field from Esteban. I thought both drivers did a great job.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I guess Esteban just didn't struggle. And I was thinking about that. They both had the tires on there. Esteban didn't seem to struggle with the graining as much, and
yeah,
that's got to lend itself to that car if Pierre's having another issue other than graining.
right.
I
You
would
would think.
think, unless he
Yeah,
cooked his tires somehow and couldn't recover. But yeah, that was weird. But anyway, good
yeah.
result for Esteban.
Oh yeah, no, he did good. He charged. He made a lot of passes. He charged up through the field, and yeah,
Yeah,
a very good. That pairing is still. I still feel like it's fragile and probably they're on edge. Both those guys. They're not good buddies. I don't, as you say, hold station. No, I'm not going to do that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
They're not
exactly.
going to play nice to each other ever. I don't think.
Yeah,
But Esteban definitely
yeah,
had the better run of things on this race, and good for
he
him
did.
because he did beat a lot of people out there and came through them. So.
Yeah, he did. Another great race, Aston Martin, Lance Stroll, P5, Fernando Alonso, P9. Another great P5 for Lance. That's two P5s in a
Mhm.
row for him. Started on softs, Paul, in 19th, and made up 10 places on the opening
Yeah.
laps. A great result for him. The safety car came out, gifting him a cheap stop for new tires. So he got off those softs pretty quick at the right time.
Mhm.
Managed those new tires really well, secured a fifth place, his second fifth place in a row. I thought it was a terrific race for Lance.
Yeah, no, it was very, very good. They had to
Yeah,
do something different. They started on the softs. That was different for sure, and it worked out to his benefit. And yeah, the last two races turning around. We got a smiley Stroll
he got
driver again,
smiley, happy
and
Lance.
yeah, taking the heat off during the Christmas break. Maybe I don't know,
Yeah,
but definitely
yeah,
definitely helps a lot. And it's good that the Aston Martin, you know, kind of turned it around a little bit. It's not up to
Yeah.
that level that it was, but at least it's back to where it probably should be ultimately on the race weekend. But
Yeah.
so yeah,
Agreed.
good for
Agreed.
you, Lance.
Good for you, Lance. Fernando, fair to say that he had a little bit of an uncharacteristic spin at turn one. Caused
Mm.
some damage for a few drivers, so this put him at the back of the grid where he fought back to 10th, including some good battles with Carlos Sainz, his fellow countryman back there. The safety car certainly helped Fernando out in gaining some of that track position back, but he said that he enjoyed it. He said there's some great battles on track. He also was struggling with a lot of graining, he said, and a lack of grip. So it's, so he said, this is really good information for next year's race here, with all the data that we harvested and everything. He had a lot of fun out there, but yeah, a
Well,
little
that's
strange to
nice.
see him. It's nice for Fernando to have fun. A little strange to see him come spinning into turn one. Not exactly what you expect from Fernando, but
Yeah, I think that turn one was tricky for everybody, right?
it was
Obviously.
tricky.
But yeah,
Yeah.
he saw an opportunity there tight on the inside, but there wasn't a lot of grip there, but there was really no grip tight on the inside. No one was breaking there all weekend long. So the back came around
Yeah.
and he caused a bit of havoc. And yeah, him and Carlos were battling pretty hard back and forth, and Perez was
Yeah.
there for a while till Perez kind of
Yeah.
checked out. But yeah, it was a bit hard to get for them to make a lot of inroads. It seemed at the beginning, and um, but ultimately probably had good pace as Lance showed. So it's a shame he kind of
Yeah.
threw that away at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he would have been much higher. Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, P7, George Russell, P8. George was running third, but drifted backwards after his initial stops, and the cars that stopped on the first safety car were able to take advantage of that on the second safety car, leaving George
Hmm.
out of cycle with them and older tires. And then that left him vulnerable to Max effectively. They came together. They clashed, tore up some bodywork. That prompted the second safety car. George, hand up, said that incident was 100% on him. It wasn't Max. It was his fault. He said it changed
Did
the
he say he didn't
complexion.
see him, or he just
Yeah, he did. He
did he
said
say he didn't see him at all?
I think that's what he said. He didn't see him, and he was in his blind spot, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
And he didn't see him. And he said it changed the complexion of the race because obviously then the safety car came out. They benefited, Red Bull, they benefited from diving into the pits and tires. And he got a 5-second penalty. Now, in his defense, you know, Toto got on the radio a couple times. Okay, George, we're going for P4. It's like, hell, he's like 13 seconds away for P4 with a handful of laps left. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he did it, right? He hustled down Ocon, hunted Ocon down, made the pass on Ocon for P4, and then unfortunately that 5-second penalty dropped him P8. So, yes, he had that moment with Max. He took the full blame for that, but
Yeah.
I thought after that it was a pretty spirited drive up to P4.
Yeah, it was. I mean, what could have been, I suppose,
Yeah,
for him without that. But yeah, it's interesting because in those moments, you've there's points in the going into a corner where you can't be looking in your mirror anymore, especially driving a Formula One car at that speed. If you're not looking ahead,
yeah,
then you're behind, right? So, but then I give a little bit of blame to Max. I mean, you know those situations also know as you're a driver too, right? And when you've got to commit to the corner and just shoving your car in there, yeah, you can do it. But man, he was a bit risky, I think. I'm not going to blame George entirely. Yeah, he was the one that didn't see him, but I still think Max was taking a bit of a liberty in making it such a last second dive in there. But that is racing for sure. It looks so much like kart racing out there. Honestly, the whole deal with him and Leclerc at the beginning, and then him
yeah,
and Max. You can definitely tell Max is an ex-kart racer, along with the same thing when you see Lewis and everything like that. And that just
yeah.
it really looked like a karting technique racing out there.
It did. It's kind of Max's thing. He kind of dives down the inside at the apex, and as far as he's concerned, he has until that far opposite white line to make sure he makes the corner, and he
Yeah.
does. But
Mhm.
in the process, he's going to force you out wide
Right.
because he's going to hit that apex and take it out to the white line. That's just
Yeah.
a given,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
it's definitely if you're driving in a touring car, that was definitely a fully on move, right? In a Formula
Yeah,
car, I think you just got, wheel to wheel contact. You got to be a little
yeah.
bit more cautious, but
And he's
you
had a
know,
lot of that in the past, doing
yes,
that.
yes, and there's it
Yeah,
could have very easily ended up as one of those moments. They
it
did
could have.
clash. There was damage. They both could have been damaged, right? But
Yeah, yeah, it
I
could.
think he was a bit lucky to get away with that.
Yeah. So, for had some folks say, Max is like just ridiculous. It's too aggressive. And I would say, yeah, he was aggressive. He was
Hmm.
aggressively coming back to that field. He wanted to win it,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I mean, he doesn't. He
He
has got nothing to lose.
nothing. No.
You know,
Nothing. Right.
even talked about points in the interview and like, why are you worrying about points?
Yeah,
Points
right.
mean nothing to you at this point. It's
Right.
just about
Right.
race wins the rest of the
Yeah.
week.
And I think in hindsight, I think he hated the event but really liked the race,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's kind of
yeah.
my
He was
my
smiling at
thought.
least the first time was
Yeah,
after the
right.
race, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. So anyway, let's see. Let's talk about Lewis. Lewis had a tougher weekend, starting on the hards, and he was hit by signs at the start. Managed to get back up to P10, and then he later had that contact with Piastri. That caused a puncture. He had to limp all the way back around, lost a huge chunk of time, fell back in the field. And to Lewis's credit, I think Lewis had a fantastic recovery drive from there. He was on fresh tires, put in a great pass on Gasly at the last turn to come home in P7 of the pass. Took a lot of attachments. I mean, he hung it in there.
Yeah.
That could have gone very bad.
Very bad. Yeah.
But kudos for Lewis for pulling it off. That was a Lewis move. I thought that was a terrific pass.
Yeah. When you make moves like that, kind of like what we're talking about with Max, it paves the way for moves later on at other races that the other driver is on notice that anything can happen. So
Yeah.
be ready, but be ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lewis had elbows out. He was going, and he was going for it.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that bit between Lewis's mouth on that, getting back up to P7 and fighting his way back up. It was a good run for Lewis. I know, it was only a P7, but that's some of that wasn't his fault, and I thought it was a good recovery drive for him.
Yeah. Qualifying hurt him for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. McLaren, Lando Norris, the DNF, Oscar Piastri, P10. Lando had a nasty crash caused by cold tires and bottoming out on the bump on the track. Pretty nasty looking crash, pretty high speed too. Thankfully, Paul ground a lot of that energy off as he was kind of gliding down the outside wall, scrubbing a lot of that speed off. By the time he got to the barriers and the runoff, some of that speed was taken off. It wasn't like he went straight.
The first
into
hit
the
was
barrier.
pretty harsh though. Yeah,
The
against
first
concrete.
the first hit was pretty harsh. Yeah, I agree with you. So much so he was taken to a local hospital just for further checks. Thankfully, he's okay. Or at least that's what his Instagram page said. So, but that prompted the first safety car, which changed the complexion of the race. So anyway, that was his race, and it's a shame because McLaren were woefully off at this race. And I'll get into Piastri in just a minute. There's a part of me that's thinking, maybe qualifying wasn't their thing, but the nature of this track, maybe Lando could pull some magic out and get back up in there. They're battling for fourth in the championship. I thought maybe they could pull that off. It was unfortunate that crash. I'm thankful he's okay.
Yeah, for sure. It's and some of that comes from not enough running. Right? With missing a whole practice session, you miss certain things that you go through as a team. Running on full tanks, seeing what's out there. Maybe they won't be able to go through that whole program, and so you need a few laps to maybe find different areas on the track where a car may have an issue, and I just don't think they had enough to do that, and so. It can happen anytime, obviously, but I think that probably didn't help.
Yeah. Piastri switched to a two-stopper when he had that puncture for his clash with Lewis, but in my opinion, he may be one of the more overlooked drives of this race, coming from 18th to 4th place. I thought was a mega performance by a rookie. I don't know, overplay it, but good
Yeah,
heavens, was that a great drive.
yeah,
He looked like a seasoned veteran, marched his way all the way up into fourth and got into that altercation with Lewis, unfortunately. Um, so he came in after he had that coming together with Lewis. Unfortunately, they put on a second set of hards. And this meant, at the time for strategy, maybe that's what they thought. I'm sure they thought this would play out because the
yeah.
car was really good on hards and they knew they had a lot to make up, thinking they would capitalize on that. But unfortunately, he was obliged to stop again, and they stayed out as long as they could, hoping another safety car would come out and avoid that. Didn't happen. He boxed, finished down in 10th, but that
Right.
does not reflect on just how good of drive I think this really was for him.
Yeah, definitely rolling dice at the end there because you put the new tires on with 5 laps to go. Is not a whole lot he could do. He did do a lot, but
Yeah,
you don't give yourself enough time to recover back to maybe where you should
yeah,
end up, right? But
yeah.
yeah,
If
it's
you were on the
hard to.
wall, you probably wouldn't have waited for a safety car. You probably made that call a little earlier, give him more time.
Yeah, I mean, well, hindsight works a lot ways in racing. We've
Yeah,
won some and lost some with the same kind of thing, right?
yeah,
It's
right.
it's you can't you can play to yellow, averages or whatever, but there's no basis for that on this track. But
Yeah,
so yeah, you could have made that decision. You could have made the decision they made. Both could have been correct depending on how the race evolved. Um, so can't blame them for making that call
no,
actually. But as I said, if you got to allow yourself enough time to recover at some point and give up waiting for the safety car.
yeah,
But yeah, it's hard to picture him as being a rookie still, right? It's
it is. He
as
looks
I say,
great.
he's fast, he knows how to race, and he's right there with everybody, all the top drivers on the grid, and he
Yeah,
races right toe to toe with them. So it's fun to
yeah,
see.
yeah. A season or so under his belt, Lando will have his hands full. I think Oscar's the
Yeah,
real
I think he
thing.
still does. He does
Yeah,
already. Yeah, I
yeah,
think it's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
I think it's a good team. I think they're
It is a good
competitive.
team.
I think
Yeah,
they're both. They're not chummy, which I think is good. But I
yeah,
think they're both kind of looking in the same direction. Also, I think the team's got, it's good to have two young bulls in with skill, um, fighting out in a team like McLaren who are trying to bring themselves back up the level of the old days, right?
yeah. Agreed. Let's who are we on now? Let's talk about Williams. Alex Albon P12, Logan Sargent P16. I'm a bit bummed for them, Paul. Both
For
cars
sure.
qualified exceptionally well, started well, avoided the Alonso mess at the beginning, but unfortunately, Alex predicted it before the race. He said, yeah, we have good qualifying, but at the end, we're worried about graining, and graining became a serious issue for them. As Logan started drifting backwards, he was doing a lot of lift and coasting, trying to manage his race, trying to manage his tires. Having said that, though, Paul, it's great to see Logan get on top of his race pace and start to have good weekends. I think that's great
Yeah.
to see from him. And it was a tough race. He just started sinking backwards. You could tell they both had a lot of graining. You could just tell Logan probably didn't had as much experience with
Right,
graining
with the
tires
tire.
as Alex
Yeah.
did. Yeah, Alex was able to manage that a little better, but he's been in the sport longer, so it had more of an impact on Logan, dropping him down to P16. But it was still a good
Yeah.
race for Logan.
Yeah, definitely the tire management separated him and Albon
Yeah,
more during the race, but
for sure.
qualifying super close when they
Yeah,
were running on the good tire at the beginning, super close. So yeah, it
yeah.
is good for him. Really unfortunate for Williams. I mean, this seemed like it would have been with a low downforce
I
track, it would
know.
have been ideal. So
Yeah,
I'm scratching my head how they got it so wrong where they couldn't get their heads around dealing with that graining. But as I said, everyone missed a session basically.
yeah.
And so the lower level teams, maybe they don't have the resources to be able to, deeper dive into the data to try and figure out how to solve an issue with,
Right.
on the computer rather than through just miles on the track.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Everybody missed a session on that. Well, the fans missed two sessions, but who's
Yeah,
counting?
that's true.
Alex said he was really struggling with graining as they opted for a one-stopper. He was out on old tires late in the race. He said it was a shame because both he and Logan felt really good on the first stint. And it's interesting to see the difference. Whereas Red Bull liked the hard tires, those hard tires on the Williams just did not work.
Right.
And they really struggled with them. So unfortunate. But he salvaged a P12, did Alex, and unfortunate. They lost so much pace.
Yep.
Let's see. Are we on Haas? Yes, we are. Nico Hulkenberg, a DNF. Kevin Magnussen, P13. Kevin had a good qualifying. Started well, too, and was running in the top 10 for the first part of the race. Very much like that Williams, Paul, started graining, seriously, robbing him of pace. He dropped back down through the field. It's a shame because I kind of thought, I was hoping, because, again, I thought Haas might have a good race here if they, like Ferrari, could get on top of that tire. If they didn't grain, I think they may have had a good race. Hence the qualifying, but it just didn't pan out for Kevin. Nico lost a few places at the start, avoiding Alonso's spin. Then he felt that he had decent pace. Unfortunately, he had a loss of power, parked up the car for a DNF late in the race. But anyway, I thought Kevin was thereabouts, kind of like Alex. Just didn't happen.
Yeah, it seemed like Haas have been turning it around recently where their race pace was a bit better, but it seemed like the Haas of old. Good qualifying, crappy race. But yeah, it's as you talked about at Red Bull Ring, a track like this, I'm talking about it should be more competitive because it's more simplistic, there's less compromises. But if you get it a little bit wrong, it ends up being very wrong compared to everybody else, right?
Yeah, good point. Alpha Tauri, Dan Ricciardo, P14, Yuki Tsunoda, DNF. The Ukester started on softs, just like Lance did, but it didn't work out for him, Paul, because I think the team, my hunch, is the team left him out too long on the softs. And then he started drifting backwards. He didn't benefit for that, where he started on softs, probably should have boxed like Lance did in that first safety car.
Yeah.
They left him out too long, started losing places. Then, to compound that, Yuki unfortunately started battling a gearbox issue for most of the race. Eventually parked it up next to Hulkenberg's car for a DNF. Didn't go well there for the strategy. And for Dan's point, Dan said that he knew that they were going to struggle, but he felt like if they could just get into the race, he thought they could generate some heat in the tires in the longer runs, and that they would get back into the mix with the rest of the cars, but that never really materialized. And then late in the race, yes, a few cars started falling off the pace pretty seriously, and they were better than that, so that was good. I managed to get back to 14th, but not the points. So his hopeful thinking that they would get those tires into the heat window and the grip window in the long run didn't pan out.
Yeah, so he was hoping for a lot of green flag, no two safety cars we had, I think. Yeah, so forcing more
and a virtual
pit stops.
safety car. Yeah.
Yeah, so it didn't pan out for them. They only had one bullet in the gun, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. And didn't work out. Talking about didn't work out, Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas, DNF, Joe Guan Yu. No, that wasn't DNF. Damn it. I know better than this, Paul. What's wrong with me? I'm going to have to go look.
No. I don't know. I'm going to write in the comments.
I changed in my notes.
Another blunder.
Yeah. Consider this the water valve cover part of the... no, it wasn't. Joe was in 15th. Valtteri was 17th. I know I had that. I don't know what I was thinking.
You're so down on this Alpha team. You've been discounting them even though they finished the race. Wow.
I just want them to fail. Like people want the race to fail, damn it. Yeah. Apart from the weekend taking a bit of an odd turn with Valtteri all over the paddock promoting his new calendar featuring 12 months of his butt. Did you see that?
Well, no, I didn't see that, but that's the place to do it. There's lots of butt pictures in Vegas, so
yeah, there are. Yeah, right.
A lot of clients out there looking for that kind of thing.
See, this is the difference between Valtteri and I. He's totally out there.
This is the difference. Yeah.
Well, and he's a much better driver than I am too, and a dashingly handsome Finn, and there's a lot of difference. But this is one of the differences between. And maybe one of the differences between you and him as well, because you both are good drivers. So the reality of it is he's totally out promoting and selling and happy to offer a calendar with 12 pictures of his butt. See, you just wouldn't see me doing that.
How much do you think one of those costs?
I don't know, but you can go to Botass, right? So it's BOTTASS.
I get it.
Yeah, you got it. Okay. .com, and you can buy that calendar.
I could buy it.
Yeah.
Maybe my mum would like
but
that.
I won't.
Yeah.
Your mom. Yeah.
Happy Christmas, Mum.
Yeah. So when
It's
you're
a very
dad, he can
Botass
put it up in the shop.
Yeah.
Change the Snap-on Tool Girl calendar down and put up the Botass calendar. That's good.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. It's a little weird.
All
Sorry.
year long.
It's just a little weird. But his race didn't really his race kind of looked like ass too. He got caught up in the Alonso spin at turn 1, got hit from Perez in the ass.
Well, you put a target on you.
Yeah, you did put a target on it. So is there a lot of ass talk in this? Sorry.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So anyway, that prompted a stop for a wing. This put him in the very back of the grid. Struggled to make progress from there. Actually had a damaged diffuser in the back. Lack of grip. Ends up finishing down P17, unfortunately. Not a lot to talk about that, unless you would like to add more. Okay.
I think there's been a lot of arse talking. Let's just move on.
Yeah. He was at a butt end of a lot of jokes.
Yes.
Yeah,
No
and he was at the
time.
ass end of the grid, right?
Hey.
Yes. Yeah. Do I have a boom tish? I do.
Well done.
Joe said that boxing under the first safety car worked very well for him, but that left him doing 30 laps on mediums, and that was going to be a tall order. He could not hang with the cars on fresher tires, and the last 10 laps got chewed up there and is down in P17. So he enjoyed racing there with some of the front runners after the first stint, but couldn't hang in there the last 10 laps. So that's how they finished. That's what we think about how they finished, but we always hand out some awards at the race, and the first one is, you got it, move of the race.
Seriously, Todd?
Yes, seriously.
Seriously.
Oh, boy. So
many.
move of the race. Who'd you have?
I have to go with Charles on that last lap move. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a
Older
good shot.
tires
It's great.
in a car with less downforce, outbraking.
Yep.
That
is
Perez
serious.
gave him a helping hand, obviously, but
did.
he made the
Here,
move. And it
welcome.
took laps. To size up that move.
Yeah, it was. That was one seriously motivated Monegasque.
Mm-hmm.
It was. I completely agree with you. Although, to be different, I'm going to go with Lewis on Pierre Gasly. I thought that pass was terrific. Yeah, a great pass, Lewis. I'm with you all the way, buddy. You and me, Lewis. You and me.
Yeah.
We're like this, Lewis and I.
Yeah. That's what brings you guys together, both your fashion sense and your appreciation of high-speed passing.
Yeah. In the summer, everybody's like, all you have is like polo shirts. Yeah. And in the winter, it's like, all you have is flannels. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, is your wardrobe like David Beckham's?
No.
Have you seen the Beckham show?
I have.
Yeah, where you're lined up and you got your polo Monday, polo Tuesday. No,
I'm not OCD. Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I just go in and pick out whatever comfortable flannel. Like, I'm from Missouri. What do you want, people? You know, I'm like Pete Townsend. I was born with a plastic spoon in my mouth. What do you want?
Yeah. The fashion show is in New York for a reason, not in Missouri.
That's right. I live in a forest. Every day I see 50 deer in my yard.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
the deer don't appreciate glitz.
They don't. The deer, absolutely. The deer say, us people out here, that's 99% show and 1% sporting. You know,
you dress down for the deer, else they get pissed off.
There's
a lot of them out there. They could gang up on you. Your pictures. There's a lot of them out there right now. Jeez.
It's like a petting zoo where I live in this forest. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this afternoon there was 5 deer in my front yard, right outside my window. And they just sit there and look at you and give you the middle finger. It's and when you come up on a posse of them, Like
Yeah.
even does, they start snorting, stamping their hoof.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
they
Like
think
some
they're pretty
adolescents,
cool.
angry adolescents.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
They think they're pretty cool, and they think they're scaring me, but they don't realize when I got the end of that leash would herd their asses all the way back to my house, whether they wanted to or not. I got an Australian
Yeah.
Shepherd on the leash, and he's like, "Bring it, let's
Yeah.
go."
Yeah. Or you
it's
just
pretty
you just
funny.
could call up the deer jerky band,
That's
pull
right.
up in your front. Hey George, I
Yeah.
think we better get out of here. Things
Yeah.
ain't looking so good.
That's right. I'm like, ladies, the only thing between you and nipped heels and herded back to my driveway is this leash. Be thankful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's just me. Lewis and I, we're not on the same page. Lewis Fashion and I. All right, how about the Donkey Award?
Yes, I can hear you, Clem Fandango.
Yes. Who'd you
Yes,
have?
I can hear you. Well, there's a lot of the peripheral stuff that
Oh,
would
yeah.
be very donk worthy. I mean, very, very. So, and then there's the obvious. So I'm just going to go back to what I know, which is racing. I don't know much about Elvis impersonating and things like that. So, I'm going to go with the Williams team, converting a third. I know it's harsh. We build them up. We support them. We want them to do well, but
Wow.
going from
It's harsh.
2 cars in the top 6 to 2 cars out of the points. Do better.
That's be better. If I had to give it to a team, who would I give it to? Can I give it to Valtteri Bottas's ass?
Really? That's a donkey? I don't know. If he's selling it, it's got to be valuable.
He's probably selling a lot of them. Maybe he's.
Yeah.
I'm not a judge. I don't.
Maybe
know.
that should
Maybe
be
he's
move
got a
of the
good butt.
race.
I don't know.
That's maybe the move of the race.
It could be the move of the race. He probably
Yeah.
minted a fortune on his butt.
Probably did.
Who knew? Did you ever think there would be a time that you would see a Formula One driver in the paddock shilling a calendar of his butt?
I did actually, but that would have been
Did
the
it?
70s.
It would have been James Hunt.
Yeah, it would have been James.
It
for
would have been
sure.
James Hunt. Yeah,
Him and maybe Jacques Lafitte,
maybe.
But,
Would you? You wouldn't have seen a
I don't
calendar
know about
of
bare
Prost's
ass. Well,
butt.
James for sure, but yeah.
James for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe Gerhard Berger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Only if he was mooning Senna, which he was wont to do on occasion. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, I'm going to give Donkey to, look, there's got to be a little donkey for the Las Vegas Grand Prix group. I mean, the covers on the street, homologating the track just like an hour or two before the event.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that it's more about, for me, the manhole cover. Things that's bad, but
It is.
the dealing with the fans, I think, is worse.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
Because you combine that with the overhyping and over expenditure that everyone had to do to get there, and then just herding them out and basically not seeing a Formula One car on day one.
Hear me on this,
Got to react to that better.
Las Vegas Grand Prix group. I think you did an awesome job. You really did. The race was fun to watch. Qualifying was fun to watch. The track, it's hard to get visuals. I know the team, you guys will change it. You guys will come on song. This will be a really good race. You'll get it right. You're going to make the changes you need. I full faith and confidence in you. I just kind of think covers on the street. We've kind of been down that road several times. Need to double check those. You need to really test those out. Those are serious issues, and you know that as well as anyone else, right? The other thing is the fans. If you're going to make the track right, you got to make it right for the fans. Everybody could have came in a day later and saved a hotel room cost for the night. Offering up a $200 credit at your online merch stores.
Yeah, that's not enough. Considering all the money
what
they
we did to you, but buy more of our shit.
Yeah, they lost more than $200 a head on
Yeah.
gambling instead of watching cars going around.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. And the hype, to be honest with you, the race produced a fun enough race not to need that level of hype, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion, but I think you did a great job. I do. I'm not beating you up here. I think the race is a lot of fun. And to pull off an event of that scale and that size with that facility, buying the land, building the paddock. Trust me, folks, that is massive to build that. Massive. I can't explain to you. I've been I've led project management teams for large corporations, and this is not an easy thing to do. So kudos to them. I'm not beating you up.
Yeah.
Finally is Drive of the Race.
Get down. Yes, I can hear you, Glenn Fandango.
Yes. All right, Paul. That's a groove, isn't it?
It is a groove. I'm going to go with Charles again.
Yeah.
I
good
think,
shout.
the pass was awesome at the end, but actually
Yeah.
he just ran a good race.
He
And
did.
It's hard
He
to
did.
go toe-to-toe with Max Verstappen. Last weekend he did.
Yeah.
I thought he had
Yeah. It was
pole
a great
position,
race.
and I know he's frustrated at not converting it to wins,
Yeah.
but, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's like we said in the chat. He's like, Charles not able to convert those pole positions to wins. And I don't really see it that way. I see it as, wow, Max able to convert those non-pole positions into wins.
Right.
It's impressive,
Yeah.
you know. It's not Charles' fault. He didn't leave anything on the table, trust me. Just
Yeah.
that Max is exceptional right now. I agree with you. I think Leclerc drove the race. Although if I to mix it up a little bit, I easily could give Piastri a drive of the race. I think he had a fantastic run. He really did. And I think Esteban Ocon had a very, very good run at this race. All three of them did, in my opinion. So I could do that. Let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
Right up front. Our friend Brock. How you doing, Brock? He asked this. He says, this question is mainly for Paul. So I'm out of the equation here.
Okay.
This is
Leave the
all on
room.
you, Paul.
Yeah.
Mercedes and Ferrari have not had the season they were hoping for, and Aston Martin has had a downturn in performance. Paul, how does a team and drivers keep morale up and motivation to fight while having a frustrating season? Thank you for the entertainment. Well, thanks, Brock. This is a great point. How do they do that?
It's a great
Paul?
point.
How do you guys do it?
It's difficult, right? I mean, it is difficult. We had, even with our car, the 23 car had pace the whole year, but didn't get a win till right at the end. Then we won 2 in a row and everything. And it really is difficult when you get DNFs and just something's not happening. It's just so many ways, like any sport, right? There's just so many ways you can try and say the same, hey, we're going to get them this time, right, guys? And it's been 4 in a row where you haven't got those guys, but you said the same words. So you just got to focus on finding an avenue where your car will be, focus on the strong points in the car and the weekend you got coming up. And I think, you just kind of motivate everyone by progression and what we're learning. Even if it's a bad weekend, say, hey, we learned a lot. We know we're going to turn this around, but these lessons we learned, sometimes you've got to have dips in order to have rises. And if there wasn't dips, then the rises wouldn't be so grandeur, right? And if it was easy, then it also wouldn't be such an achievement. And that's definitely one that I definitely lean on. It's like, it's not going to be easy. There's a lot of good competitors out there. There's good drivers, good teams, etc. Let's just use this to fine tune us. We've got to be literally at the top of our game, and the times will come. But yeah, if there's a lull for a long time, that it really is very, very tough. You just got to kind of rethink how you vocalize things and how you challenge the weekend to some degree.
And I think it would be similar. I mean, it's not Formula One for you, Paul, but, in case I think most of you know, but Paul is operating at the pinnacle of motorsport in sports car
Am I?
racing.
Holy
Yeah,
crap.
you are. You're in WEC, Le Mans,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't get any bigger show than Le Mans.
No.
And you're running IMSA. That's the premier sports car league in America, and WC is the sports car league in Europe, right? You guys are a team operating at the peak of sports car racing, just like Formula One is the peak of open wheel racing.
Right.
And I got to think it's similar. If I'm wrong, tell me. But I got to think it's similar for like that 23 car. If you're not like Lewis, he's looking for marginal improvements because those small improvements are compounding, right? And you're adding those improvements in pace and braking and setup and aero and all of those facets of your program, as long as you're making those incremental gains, right? You can anchor a lot on that, because incremental gains added up are huge gains, right? And at your level, Paul, at Le Mans, at IMSA, at your level, it's hard to find huge chunks of time anywhere, right?
Yeah.
You don't find, oh, you mean if we turn it this way, now we're going to be 5 seconds quicker than the Mercs? That doesn't happen, right?
Right.
And neither does it happen in Formula One. We're talking about tenths, hundreds, and thousands. And it's very similar in sports cars. So I'm assuming, Paul, as long as your drivers and your team are making those incremental gains, that's keeping your motivation up. I hope I'm right. I could be wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you focus on, I mean, if we're not a fast car on the track, then you focus on how great the pit stops can be to try and gain you something. And yeah, so absolutely. Every lessons learned, whether they're positive or negative, have a positive effect for the future, because you're learning from them, right? And that's what you have to carry with you.
Right.
But I'd say the worst thing is if you're in a lull for a long time. That's the hardest thing to beat yourself out of. If you have a bad weekend, you can shrug it off. 2 bad weekends, bad luck. But yeah, so we've been privileged on our side, and Mercedes have too, and Ferrari have. They've got pole positions. There's things to hold your hat on. That you can take as a positive. So the teams are getting closer to Red Bull. They are.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Good question, Brock. Thanks for that. Finally, Ryan McLeod asked, hey, Todd and Paul, with Vegas unfortunately having a few issues, and this, he put this before the race had started, naturally the conversation comes up that they could use one of the many great tracks around the U.S., such as Road America, but they're not Grade 1 FIA tracks. My question is, how do street races meet an equivalent requirement, or are they given a different standard to hit than, say, like Road America, Road Atlanta, etc.?
Yeah. It's hard to conceive, right? I mean, I think, it's about containment. In the old days, when the cars weren't as strong and safe, it was all about runoff. They're going to go off. If you hit something solid early, then the cars will explode. Nowadays, the cars and the way they position the concrete for glancing blows rather than head-on blows, and there was a lot of runoff in a lot of the danger areas in these high speed into hard braking areas. So I think it's the layout of the track. Like somewhere like Road America, you can't you could probably put concrete barriers all the way around there, but because the layout of the track is what it is, it's still not going to allow it to be, the corners aren't designed in a way that you can contain and make glancing blows and all that kind of stuff. So Road America would be the perfect F1 race to me if they can make it work. I like the mention of that track, and places like the Glen also, right? So it'd be great to see F1 cars go around there, but just the layout, the high speed nature, and the lack of runoff, and there's no really way of adjusting those tracks to it. But when you start on a street circuit, you can plan for these things, which makes them a little less characterful, right? Because they have to neuter the corners to make them safer, and that's how they're still under they're still under the same level that they have to do, but what they're reading is maybe not what people see from the outside looking in as to what their demands are for a safe circuit, safe enough for Formula One cars.
Right. Yeah. Great question, Ryan. Appreciate that as always. Yeah, good questions, Brock and Ryan. If you have a question, you can go leave it. If you go to our website, the top right menu over the right says mailbag, and you can click on that. It'll take you to a page where you can post your questions, and then I go through each week before the podcast, and I pull the questions out from there. So if you'd like to do that, you can also email me your questions or send me a DM or on social media or whatever. That's fine too. But anyway, great questions as always.
Now, are you going to post the link to the Bottas calendar in the comments?
I might. Yeah, I might. Just so there's no confusion for those of you who are
I'm not saying why. I just, I'm just curious.
You you can admit to me that you really do want a calendar with 12 pictures of Valtteri's bottom, and that's fine.
Let's
Paul.
just say, I watched Drive to Survive, my favorite, not my favorite, my wife's favorite episode was the Bottas in the snow. So
Yeah.
I don't know why. I was like, well, it's a little dull, but whatever.
That's
Watched over and over again. I don't know.
he's an enigma, that Valtteri. Who knew?
Who knew?
Yeah, he's got pizzazz. So there you go. All right, well, that's what we think about the Las Vegas Grand Prix. You let us know what you think. You can do that by going to theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion. Just do it with decorum and civility, as always. A huge, huge thank you to our Patreon supporters that are hanging in there with us and the new ones we've got. We've lost several, so if you're interested in supporting us, if you like the podcast, feel free to go to our website on the right-hand side or at the bottom left. You say it says support us. You can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi or PayPal, however you want to support us. But anyway, we would be very grateful for that. If you like the podcast, go to your favorite podcast player, give us a good review. That's always very nice as well. And I would like to say that I got a couple of weeks, Paul, but that's not true because we have Abu Dhabi coming up this weekend, the final race. Adopt a Doggy. We got that coming up. This weekend, the final race of the 2023 season. Who will win the champion? There's still a lot out there.
Third, for fourth. No,
for fourth. Yeah, that's right. That's what we're looking for. There's 11 points between Aston Martin and McLaren, so that's interesting. No. Is it 11 points? Or is it 11 points between Sergio? No, between
Sergio's wrapped
Lewis,
it up, right?
Yes. Lewis and Alonso, I think, is very close.
Okay.
And Aston Martin and McLaren is very close. So yeah, there's a few battles to watch out for. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. So until next weekend, when we come back and do it all over again, this is Todd, aka Negative Camper, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.